seem caught on the horns of a dilemma. The old way of life was materially impoverished, but far richer socially than the present. Must one quality be lost in order to have the other? In keeping with the aspiration of Illinois Humanities to strengthen society, we hope to contribute in whatever small way we can toward causing the answer to that question to be no. In order to do that, we need to listen carefully and learn as much as we can about the continually evolving relationship between the agricultural sector and the economies and cultures of Illinois communities. Listening to you and learning from you are our main goals for this evening. We hope you'll use the comment cards that have been placed at your tables to tell us anything you'd like us to know about the relationship between agriculture and culture in this region, and about how we might help to support constructive cultural activity here. We'll say more about the comment cards during supper, but actually I'll say another quick word about them right now. We know that many of you here are very much involved in many different aspects of agriculture here in Union County and the surrounding area. And we really are honored that you're here, and we're anxious to listen to you and learn from you. So if there's anything that you would like to share with us as to what you would like us to know and how we as an organization can make positive contributions in this region of the state, we'd love for you to share your ideas on those comment cards. And we may also share anonymously, only anonymously, any observations that you would like to share with the whole group by email after this event. Speaking of supper, though, we sincerely thank the participants in the old feed store's Sunday Farmers Market, as well as the other local farms, orchards, vineyards, and breweries who have participated for providing supper. And I'm glad that Ray mentioned a number of them for us. And we're also very, very thankful to Ray Hogan and the Old Feed Store and everyone here, Joe and all who have helped. We're enormously grateful to them for hosting us and for everything they've done. They've been tremendously helpful. We also thank Soundcore Music in Carbondale for providing videography, and we are thrilled that Will Mehring and Robert Bolin, two of the most distinguished artists in this region, and as far as I'm concerned, two of the most distinguished artists, period, have agreed to share their music with us. It's wonderful. Additionally, I'm thankful to several members of the Illinois Humanities staff for all of their good work in planning this program and for giving me the chance to participate in it. They include Simon Nee, our program manager for media, journalism, and business, Kay Ripplemeyer-Tippy, whom many of you know, who is our Southern Illinois field representative, Paul Dorica, our director of programs, and Angeli Seguire, our executive director. We're also very thankful to our guest speakers, Simon King, director of the Design Lab at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Mike Plummer, a very accomplished conservation agriculture consultant from the Creel Springs area, who works throughout the Midwest and South, Wayne Searles, president of Rendleman Orchards here in Union County, who many of you also know. You can read more about each of them in your printed programs. Their presentations will touch upon a wide variety of specific topics, but all of them will address in one way or another the themes of continuity and change in the relationship between agriculture and culture. Afterward, there will be plenty of time for your questions and comments. All opinions, including views that may differ from those of our speakers, will be welcome. You're more than welcome to express disagreement. We only ask that you treat others as you would wish to be treated. So to begin, please welcome Simon King.
All right, thank you, Matt, and thank you, everybody, for coming out and spending your evening with us. As Matt mentioned, the theme of this series and a lot of the talks is about different types of change in agriculture. I'm going to be talking about some of the changes in technology that we've seen in agriculture over the years. Just a little bit of my background. I grew up, as me a very long time ago. I grew up in rural Michigan. There's an old farmhouse that sat on this square plot of land, kind of like an island. There were cornfields on 3 sides and steady traffic of US 12 on the other. And, everybody knows that the Midwest is the agricultural heartland of America, but it's not something that I ever had to be told. Growing up in the summer, I would run into these towering rows of corn as fast as I could, the sky overhead turning from blue to green. And in the fall, I'd ride with my father in his combine, which I thought of as this agricultural vacuum cleaner, just sucking up thousands of acres of corn. As a child, farming was normal to me, as it has been for most people throughout history. As my favorite hat used to say, farming is everybody's bread and butter. So agriculture is nothing new. It's been a very long time since we switched from hunting and gathering to planting and harvesting. The principles of farming today would be familiar to our ancestors, but the practice in modern times has really seen radical innovation. And one of the key drivers for that change has been massive population growth. So today there's over 7.2 billion people on this planet. That's a 70% increase from just 1 century ago. And like most industries in the modern era, agriculture embraced that challenge by using advanced technology. And it worked. Yields have increased 800% in the last century. And this growth and the technology that drove these changes can be thought of as happening in stages or different technological eras. So to recap those, first came mechanization in the early 1900s, when farmers could harness engines and gasoline to expand the amount of acreage that they could work. In the 1930s, genetic hybrids dramatically improved the seeds themselves. And after World War II, farming had a kind of chemical era where technology originally developed for the war was used to make fertilizers and pesticides to fight the perpetual enemy of crop-destroying insects. In the 90s, further genetic modifications and innovations resulted in these super seeds, resistant to both insects and herbicides, so blanketing a field with chemicals could kill everything but the corn. And along with this growth came consolidation. So if you look throughout the 20th century, even as the amount of farmland remained pretty constant, that's this tan line across the bottom of the slide, there's been a trend towards fewer and fewer farms, each with an expanding amount of acreage. As farming became ever more sophisticated over time, it demanded a higher price of entry. Basically, all this technology does not come cheap. And so farmers saw their capital expenses rise in relationship to their income. And basically that just meant that farmers had to take on more and more risk every year. Now, it takes a gambler's mindset to play the farming game anyways. People like my dad sit down at that agricultural poker table every year because this is a passion-fueled business. This is an industry filled with people that can't imagine doing anything else. Which is how the average farmer can get caught up in this feedback loop of high risk and flat return and an increasing dependency on whatever big ag has to offer as a solution. But what choice do farmers have when, to use this latest technology, and whether that's monoculture planting or, blanket pesticides or Roundup Ready corn? There's this idea that we need these blunt tools because they promise a way to avoid catastrophe. And this is a risky profession. It depends on a mix of the market and the weather. And it's always been that way, but now the possibility of bankruptcy after just one bad year looms larger than ever. So we're now entering a new technological era in farming that sometimes gets called precision agriculture, Sometimes it's called data-driven agriculture. And this era is becoming to be defined by how farmers can utilize embedded microcontrollers and sensors and the internet to plan and perform and monitor their fields in different ways. Physical devices of all kinds across many industries are starting to be embedded with computation and network connectivity. And sometimes this gets written about in the press, and you hear it referred to as the Internet of Things. That's not a phrase that farmers tend to use, but the interesting thing is that agriculture is actually ahead of many other industries in finding real and productive uses for this technology. So there's things like farm management platforms that can track your equipment's location, allow you to set curfews and geofences and usage alerts. There's GPS-enabled yield monitors that provide sub-field analysis of a harvest. And these results can be combined with other data in new ways to inform dynamic seeding, where a planter can actually vary the depth or seed type throughout a single field. There's self-driving tractors that can perform fully autonomous tasks, or they can act as a tag-along and follow behind human-driven vehicles. These use advanced sensor technologies like LiDAR, which is incredibly accurate in comparison to GPS. There's farm drones that can analyze the health of crops from the sky and create variable rate nitrogen prescription maps. This is data that's fed into a sprayer to avoid wasting any fertilizer by varying the amount that's spread in different parts of the field. So these are real examples of technology that exists today and is offering new capabilities. But are they actually good for the average farmer? You know, Big Ag's vision of the future of farming is often very top-down. They exploit technical possibilities, but they leave it up to the farmer to do the math on if it's actually worth the investment for them. Not only is this technology very costly, but the farmer's data is often captured and owned by the equipment manufacturers. So now we're seeing data ownership debates in the agriculture world that rival what we're seeing in the consumer world with Facebook or Google. And beyond data, companies like John Deere are actually claiming that farmers don't really even own their tractors, at least not the embedded software that increasingly defines what makes these machines new or special. So they've told the Copyright Office that farmers have an implied license for the life of the vehicle to operate the vehicle. And this has prompted some senators in Nebraska to actually try to push forward legislation called Right to Repair, which is just trying to legally ensure the simple idea that a farmer should be able to make modifications to something that they purchased. So when you look at it from this angle, precision agriculture is little more than a silicon-powered continuation of the status quo. It's another era that could extend the consolidation and corporatization of food production. But in the past decade, there's been a parallel revolution in food that really has nothing to do with big ag, and in fact is quite the opposite. And many of us know this, the rise of the so-called locavore movement. And this is where consumers want a closer connection to the food that they eat. And locavores want healthy food. Ideally, it's locally grown. And they want a good story about where that food came from. And part of what makes for a compelling story is the technology that isn't used. So no cages, no pesticides, no genetic modification or non-organic processes. The desire to eat locally has seen a huge expansion in farmers markets. So it's really dramatic. It's increased 470% in the last decade. There's also been a rise in CSAs. Stands for Community Supported Agriculture, where a farmer directly packages up food and sends it to subscribers throughout the year. But is the locavore movement really helping farmers? as much as it could? Well, I think sometimes yes. Sometimes it's incredibly helpful. If a farmer goes to a local market to sell their food, that cuts out the middleman. It keeps that money in that community. But the demand for better food has gotten much larger than just the local market. And with that can come really demanding points of view as well. And those can be pretty disconnected from the economics of farming at times. So to think more about that, 80% of Americans live in cities. And if you go to Brooklyn or Chicago, the embrace of local foods has been conflated with broader cultural trends of slow living and getting back to basics. So there's a rise of interest in craft and in handmade processes and in trying to find a simpler approach to life. And I don't know if this is what it looks like, but the idea of people looking for something authentic, looking for something that they can be more connected to, I think in many ways that's a wonderful thing. But it can also come with very demanding points of view and sometimes privileged points of view that reject technology out of hand. So today, we can see a kind of hipster fetish around low-tech farming that's emerging, a conflation of inefficiency with quality, of manual with authentic. And it's a kind of turn back the clock, wholesale rejection of progress at times, where it's easier to just throw the baby out with the bathwater when you're sitting in your office tower on a lunch break in a city reading homesteading blogs and fantasizing about quitting your jobs to raise chickens. You're not necessarily thinking about the economics of farming and what you're demanding. Publications like Modern Farmer magazine have emerged to capitalize on this urban trend of farming as a lifestyle interest. They sell the brand of small farms more than they really serve the needs of small farmers. And it's telling to me that I found this copy in my room when I was staying at the very hip Ace Hotel in Palm Springs. Not exactly where you'd expect to find a lot of farmers. When she accepted her National Magazine Award, the editor, Anne-Marie Gardner, drove home this point by unapologetically describing Modern Farmer magazine as a farming magazine for media professionals. And you know, this kind of unsullied, pre-industrial, pastoral lifestyle makes for some really amazing photographs. But the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of farmers do just barely make ends meet. And in fact, most supplement their income with outside non-farm income of some kind. A lot of this comes down for me to the fact that farming is hard. You know, it's back-breaking, mud-covered, deep in debt, 24/7 kind of hard sometimes. And rejecting new technologies out of hand doesn't make that any easier. And that, to me, is what's so interesting about this latest era of agricultural technology. It's not the sort of inaccessible or morally questionable realms of chemical compounds or genetic modification. The democratization of technologies like microcontrollers and software and the internet have already disrupted countless other industries, and now there's signs that it might be the time for farming. So we're in the extraordinary position today that a quarter of all American farmers are beginning farmers. And this is a chance for them to embrace this new era and define it as more than just something they can use to increase yield, but something that could empower them to make their own technology decisions. Some are doing just that. There's some signs of this. People appropriating cheap technology, using it to farm more effectively, and then sharing what they learn in an open source manner. So I want to introduce you to this guy, Matt Reimer. He's a young third-generation farmer from Manitoba, and he was intrigued by the promise and the possibilities of precision farming. He taught himself how to build his own tools rather than buying into what Big Ag had to sell. which he couldn't afford anyways. He converted that 8-year-old tractor behind him into an autonomous grain cart that automatically pulls up alongside his combine in the field when he needs it to. So when Matt started, he didn't know anything about electronics or programming, but he took a free online course in programming from MIT, and he relied heavily on open source software. So that's when people write software and don't just give you the software so that you can run it, but give you the source code that goes into it so that it can be modified. It's the plans for the software that you can then take and build upon. The open source community is all about sharing, and it thrives by letting anyone build on top of the knowledge and the progress of everybody else. So farmers can benefit from that, and they can also benefit from the rise of cheap electronics that are designed for the tinkerer. And farmers have always been tinkerers, maybe more in a mechanical sense than an electronic one, but that's where I see a parallel here. In this picture, Matt's using something called the Arduino. It's a $25 electronic prototyping board that is so simple that they teach it to school kids. Now the skills involved here might be new, but the cost is cheap, and the internet is full of people willing to help. Matt built that self-driving tractor for himself. That was really to scratch his own itch as a one-off. He's not necessarily trying to sell that as a product, but he also founded Reimer Robotics to make tools that he does sell to others. And his first product is this grain bin temperature monitor. So you can remotely check the temperature of your bin no matter where you are. You can buy the complete package directly from him, but the interesting thing is that he's also open sourced the code and the plans for it. So you can go and download those for free and just build your own. This is the new feedback loop. When small farmers gain new insight, build something, and share it with a community to increase everyone's capability. One place that you can find more people like Matt is called FarmHack. It's a community that aggregates together information and organizes real-world events where farmers can meet up and collaborate on these types of projects. The way that they put it, they're tired of being dependent on the R&D departments of big ag. I think FarmHack is really the sort of ground zero for the self-empowered precision ag community. At a FarmHack meetup, you'll find farmers, of course, but you'll also find that it brings in engineers and designers and people that want to help build these kinds of tools. Their focus is on solutions that are affordable, adaptable, and easy to fix. And they do projects that are both mechanical and digital innovations. So it's everything from the water wheel transplanter, which is designed to make it easier to plant seedlings quickly, to the rain cloud irrigation system that has moisture sensors and a web-based management platform. The projects on FarmHack are designed with small farmers in mind, and they're ready to be modified, shared, and built upon. We also see companies emerging to empower farmers around the data that they're generating through their equipment. One example is the Farmers Business Network, who claim to operate with what they call a farmer-first mentality and philosophy. And to be clear, unlike FarmHack, FBN is a for-profit company, but they're independent of big equipment manufacturers or input companies, so they can aggregate data across different systems. They reveal insights across competing platforms and allow you to benchmark yourself anonymously against other farmers in your area. They allow you to choose how your data is going to be used. As companies like Monsanto and John Deere acquire massive new data capabilities, I just hope that we also see more companies, independent companies like FBN emerge that can connect farmers in new ways and allow them to retain control over how their data is used. So, the world's population is only going to continue to grow. It's going to be 8 billion people by 2024. And the scale of that problem requires an appropriate scale of solution, or thinking about solutions, not turning back the clock to just be photogenic subsistence farmers. It's not surprising that consumers have really rebelled against agricultural technology in the last couple decades. There's been seriously negative trade-offs made between increased yield and environmental impact. It makes sense. But I believe that this new era of precision agriculture is different, or it can be different, because the democratization of this technology can help farmers whether their focus is on reducing risk or reducing pesticides. Precision agriculture is a tool that has the chance to reflect instead of rejecting the values of the farmers who utilize it. So today, we can see a possible future where this false dichotomy between food technology and healthy living is broken down. A future where informed consumers might actually demand that their local, organically grown food is done so in a data-driven manner that ensures the most efficient use of resources. A future where starting a farm might be easier and less risky with modular farm tech startup kits. And a future where the story of our food might be even more detailed and accurate, not just farm to table, but a precise journey from a single seed to an individual plate. When I was a kid in rural Michigan, I didn't want to be a farmer. I was fascinated by electronics and computers and the internet. If I was growing up today, maybe things would have been different. This era is exciting to me because it's still being defined. Farming is normal. Farming is nothing new. But the way that we do it still has a lot of room to improve. Thanks.
In a farm community, it's pretty important to be able to hear, since I know I can't. Too many tractors before calves, if anybody remembers that. So comments about this. Really all-encompassing. I really like the presentation on it. And there is a huge amount of change that's going on in agriculture in both directions. In the small side, the small farm, the more local foods type, but we're also expanding radically on the commercialized farming sides as well. Some of my clients that I've worked with in recent years frequently farm between 15 and 40,000 acres each for each operation. So they're fairly large farms. And one of the farms I helped consult with last year had just expanded to just a shade over 60,000 acres in the state of Illinois. So they are getting large, and they're using this data process, and they are buying into the commercialization of it, mainly just for management purposes. So that's an aspect you got to look at. Is that much bigger better? I mean, that's another question that's out there. We do have to increase our food production. If we're going to feed the world's population, and the United States currently really feeds a lot of people overseas. Each farmer feeds about 160 to 170 people in the United States. Besides that, we export a tremendous amount of grain, have a lot of food technology and production that we send to a lot of other countries for free. Food aid. I've been involved in that a lot in Central America and Africa. We do a lot of work with organizing farms and training farmers over there. So we're looking at, if we're going to feed the world, the United States is the most efficient production of agriculture for food production. And so we're shooting for 100 bushel soybeans and 300 bushel corn average, for a nationwide average, in the next 20 years. That's the challenge that the world's given U.S. farmers. That's a fair amount. I mean, that's the average of poor soils and good soils both. Now this year we did see some farmers in Georgia that I happen to know that broke the new corn yield barrier, 504 bushels an acre on a 5-acre plot. and their whole farm average was a little over 450. So it can be done. So there are people out there that are doing things like that. But on the other hand, we also have to look at how many people we're going to be involved and what's the economics of it. Is it economical to produce 500 bushels an acre? Economics get pretty tough when you put that many inputs into a farm and that much equipment, that much technology, that much chemical, that much fertilizers as well. So there's another movement going on where we're looking at how do we deal with our degraded soils in the U.S. And that's one of our number one issues that I've actually been working on for the last 5 years, 6 years, in detail. And I worked with another foundation for the last 12 years, specifically on that. And so our soils in the U.S. are young. Our soils are very young. Soils that you're farming around here are how old? How old has it been since we started farming the bottoms in Union County? Probably 1850s, 1830s. So our soils are not very old. If you compare it to the farms I was working on in West Central Africa, that the same farm has been farmed for over 3,000 years. So those soils are pretty well beat up. But the problem that we're running into in the U.S. is our Illinois soils also have some issues. They're fairly well degraded from just 200 years of farming. So it's become a big issue. So we're looking at that as well. We've made up the difference by technology to increase the yields, while at the same time we've degraded the soil quality to build the ability to produce. So that's a project that I've worked with, and we're doing precision farming in that aspect as well. I've been really involved with the utilization of cover crops, looking at soil biology, looking at plant root growth, looking at how the plants respond to different conditions. Not necessarily the genetics, but actually the soil interaction with the plants themselves. And that's where much of the new research is going on. I have one farm near Fairfield, Illinois. And when I started working with the farmer 15 years ago, his corn average ran between 85 and 95 bushel an acre. Because it's a highly eroded hill farm. His current yield the last 2 years have been running over 230 bushels an acre. And he's been incorporating the new techniques to build soil quality. So he's using technology. He has GPS on all of his equipment, his sprayers, his tractors, his planters. The planters shut off so you don't overplant the inroads. The sprayers shut off so you never overlap a spot in the field. Each nozzle's got a controller on it, electronically controlled. Everything's put into a field map. But he's also expressed a big concern that who owns all that data. And currently, his situation is he demands that he owns the data with the companies he works with. They have no right to the data. And so it's been a difficult time for him to be that way, because most of them, especially the bigger companies like Monsanto, want to own all the information because they want to compile a nationwide database of every acre. So it's getting interesting. Some of the farmers don't want to do that. They want to own their own information, and they don't want to share it. They have the right not to share it. So you're seeing a lot of different things going on. You talked about blogs a little bit. There's I don't know if any farmers have used the blog called Ag Talk. Ag Talk's a bunch of farmers asking questions. And if you get on there, you can see some really interesting questions and some pretty off-the-wall answers sometimes. So what they do is they share their experiences on what they've farmed and what they've tried, equipment, technology, cover crops, seeds, seeding rates, everything. They're utilizing that technology to share nationwide. And not only nationwide, we were getting some questions 2 weeks ago from Ukrainian farmers. So we're doing some work there. And I've been working with a foundation where we established a no-till training center in Ghana, in Africa. And so I trained the staff there, and they basically are training the local farmers. That's small farm. Most of the farmers there are 1 to 2 acres. So it's small, but that's their entire income. And so the idea is to maximize their efficiency, keep their costs as cheap as possible. And they have to live on that. It's pretty enlightening and really makes you feel good when you go back a year or 2 later and the farmer said, well, I increased my income. When I started farming conventionally, I was making around $400 a year off my farm. That's his total income for the year. Last year, when I revisited the center, he was making $2,200 on the same number of acres. Based on practices we implemented with him on no-till production, cover crops to produce his own nitrogen, certain cover crops to mineralize nutrients in the soil to improve his productivity. So that's a huge difference for him. And that's Africa, which is very food dependent upon the United States. We ship an awful lot of food to Africa. So, same thing. We've got to look at the whole world situation. They can't afford any technology, but we can do precision work by management, different management techniques. If we're in the U.S., that's different. Big farmers can afford the technology, probably. As a small farmer where I have 100 acres, can I afford GPS-driven planters, combines, sprayers? Probably not. At what point does a small farmer have to break even on what's the economics of the technology? Now, precision agriculture, where you're getting planter parts to change, to plant the seeds correctly, exactly, you can afford that. But some of the other stuff is going to be difficult for the small farm in Southern Illinois. Average farm size, I think, in Union County was like 110 acres. Although we do have some big farms when we get over the bluff here to get into the river bottoms. But we also have a lot of part-time farmers that was mentioned. A lot of farmers. A lot of guys work at SIU or some of the state facilities where they're running 100 to 150 to 200 acres. And it's pretty hard to justify some of the technology, electronics. It's really neat to listen about the farm hack, guys sharing equipment technology. That's going to be where those folks can really benefit if they're able to do that. If they've got specifically probably a grandson or a youngster in the neighborhood that likes to do that. Some of us aren't quite capable of the electronic mentality since we never grew up with it. So it makes it a little bit challenging. So a lot of things can happen, a lot of things that's going on. Do we feed the world by increasing the technology at the expense of our soils or our water quality? No, we don't want to do that. We also want to make sure that the technology we incorporate keeps track of the fertilizers and makes them more efficient, and we protect the water and the soil. Because we're not just producing for this year, we're producing for future generations. So that becomes important.
Yes, my name is Wayne Searles, and Matt asked me to be part of the program basically to share some of my experiences and my family's experiences growing up in Southern Illinois and farming fruits and vegetables in Southern Illinois, and especially in Union County, and to tell you a little bit about what we do and what we kind of been doing to change, to adapt to the farming future, and what we sort of see as in the future of farming, as what Simon has spoke about. But once again, my family, we own Rindleman Orchards, and we're located in a little town of Alto Pass. And I'm a 5th generation farmer, and our farm has been in our family for 143 years. So I think we do know, been very fortunate, we do know a little bit about sustainability. So we raise various crops. We raise apples, peaches, nectarines, zucchini squash, cucumbers, yellow squash, pumpkins, few green beans, so we keep pretty busy all throughout the year. We pretty much raise, most of our product is for what we would call a wholesale market. We sell to grocery stores, we sell to food distributors, we sell to various processing facilities that use our product to make into another product. We employ about 70 people all through the summertime. We probably have about 18 to 20 full-time employees throughout the winter, since all of our fruit trees need to be pruned and we get ready basically for the next season to come up. We have a complete packing facility. We actually grow our crop, we pack our product, we sell it, we do everything to get it to the grocery store, we ship it and so forth. So we're a complete turnaround operation. And we also are very fortunate that we're able to continue with our products and to be able to continue selling our products, whereas Simon mentioned the local movement has also helped get our products to people that are interested in buying more local produce. We actually extend our products farther beyond Southern Illinois. We are considered local even in the Chicago community and the St. Louis community, because a lot of the Illinois stores want to help support Illinois produce. And that has been a big part of what we do, and that has taken place probably within the last 5 years, 5 to 8 years, and so forth. And what I would like to also talk a little bit about is that whole movement. And as what Simon has mentioned earlier, I really find that it's very important for farmers, and especially in Union County. As Mike mentioned, the average size of the farm in Union County is 120 acres. Union County happens to be one of the most diverse agricultural counties in the state of Illinois. We raise a lot of fruits, vegetables, and livestock. And so we have all different types of agricultural products along with the grain crops. And so we've been mostly of those crops can help capitalize on a lot of the local movement. There's a lot of smaller farms that are starting up. There's a lot of farms that are not able to supply the high volume that your grocery stores demand. So a lot of them have opportunity with the farmers markets. Some of them are actually going straight to the grocery stores and the food distributors. There's a lot of different types of chefs and stores that actually want the product to come straight to them, have a local display, and put up local product for people to enjoy throughout the season. And also, there's also a lot of bigger stores that want to help promote the local movement through their website, through their ads, all through their social media, in order to help promote the local farmer. And a lot of the local smaller farmers are family farms. A lot of them are supported by the family for generations or starting out family. A lot of people want to know where their food comes from now. We get a lot of calls and a lot of people that want to actually visit our farm, and they want to know our story. So anybody that's starting out with a farm or has a product, tell people your story. Because a lot of people, as Simon mentioned, the people that subscribe to Modern Farmer, they want to hear the story. They want to experience the story of where their food comes from, and they like to know a little bit about how you grow it and what you do. It doesn't matter what type of growing practices you have. It's just that everybody seems to want to have more of a connection with the farm, because so many more years have passed by and a lot of the generations have become so disconnected from the farm. Probably people sitting in this room remember visiting the farm of their grandparents and so forth. Well, we're even farther and farther removed from that now, that a lot of people want to have the story and feel that they're part of that. So, share your stories, and I think that's another reason that the local movement has really been able to roll pretty good. even from our area all the way to the larger metropolitan areas, is because people want to see the picture of the farmer, they want to see the story on the website, and they want to see it in publications. And that is also another way, like that the smaller farms, even though small farms that are 1 to 2, 3 acres can get started, is by going to the smaller markets. Like there's even more farmers markets now. There's the CSAs that Simon mentioned. There's a lot of there's CSAs that are started, and people are wanting to spend their dollars with that. As we all know, a lot of people do not do as much processing of the product anymore. People do not can or freeze or put up produce anymore like they used to. They want to get the fresh produce brought to them. They want to have direct access to it. So those are all different types of economic opportunities that could be for the smaller farmer to get started. And also, it helps to support our local economy. I mean, it brings a lot of money back into our local economy, and it brings it brings more jobs, and it helps out our local economy a lot to support local and so forth. And then Simon also mentioned a little bit about future generations and the family farm. We actually on our farm, we do cover crops. We do all different types of farming practices in order to help try to sustain our soils, to sustain our environment. We actually live in a very hilly area. So my family, we have been doing cover crops actually for years because we were trying to help prevent erosion, and we've tried to help and build up the soils. And we've actually been using cover crops for all of our vegetables. We do a no-till type vegetable production, and we've actually seen very nice results with cover crops. Only issues we have are pretty much with vegetables is you have weed control issues and so forth. That's the biggest problem we have. But we've noticed where, as Mike mentioned, the soils seem to be a lot better, seems to be more friable, seem to be able to work it a lot better. We have a wider range of adaptability according to the weather and so forth with that. And we also try to maintain our lands through mowing and so forth. We mow a lot of our hillsides. We do a lot of tremendous amount of mowing in order to bring a better presence, in order to take care of our land in a better way for future generations. A lot of these practices in the long run help us to have better crops and so forth. It helps us to reduce our inputs as far as we're with an IPM program. Our IPM program is we do a lot of monitoring for insects and for our diseases. Instead of going out and just actually applying different pesticides, we actually have a program where we monitor insects and trap them. We figure out how much rainfall comes and how much the types of humidity we have in order to apply our various crop protectants. We also use a little bit of technology for our fertilizer program. We are under a program where we actually take soil samples through a satellite system, GPS, where we sample in the various spots of soils that are previously sampled, so we use the satellite system for that. As far as a lot of the types of technology that Simon has mentioned, as far as tractors driving themselves, as far as precision planting, I'm pretty much in the same boat as what Mike mentioned. You know, a big field to us in this hilly area is probably 20 acres. So, you know, unless you get more down towards the bottoms, that technology would be a little bit more feasible for them. It's something that we would have a hard time dealing with. Especially, you know, we're just lucky to have a good internet connection where we live. I mean, we're down to that. We're down to that. So we're extremely limited to having, you know, a good internet connection for what we do out in the rural area where we live. But, you know, I think it's important that we all grasp and learn about all that different technology so we can think about the future. We can think about what we can adapt to. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I tell you what, farmers are probably some of the most adaptable people that I know because the weather rules our lives, and we have to adapt our schedules every day according to the weather. And so we can take a lot of situations and we can adapt to it. And technology is another thing that we can pretty much take what other people do and try to bring it to our level, and always try to keep an open mind with that. And also, I feel that in this farming profession, farmers are very much together and like sharing. And I really, really enjoy that with my business because I've never been around some of the most sharing and giving people in my life than when you are with farmers. It's definitely, as Simon mentioned, it's definitely a special breed of people, and I'm very proud to be a full-time farmer, and I'm very proud that I'm a fifth-generation farmer because I would not be a farmer if it wasn't for my parents and my grandparents and my great-grandparents for what they did to build upon for what we have. So, you know, people like to share information. As the gentleman that Simon spoke about, you know, it's not uncommon for people just to share information. I've had this problem, the blogs, you know, my best friends are fellow farmers. We share information, we all work together. It's pretty much a universal industry where people work with each other instead of against each other. So I think that always keeping your mind open, go to the different blogs to share information, and if you have any questions, there's never really a bad question. Never really a bad question. But you know, it's a privilege to be here. I hope I shared some of my experiences with you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm glad to be part of the program, and I thank you for coming.
I guess I'll sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go right ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Michael, the no-till was the 500 plus acres. Was that a no-till situation, or was that? You know what I'm saying?
The farm that had the 500 bushel corn yield,
Yes.
that one was basically conservation till, not a pure no-till.
It was. I'm sorry.
It had some tillage, very minor tillage, that
Okay.
left high level of residue on the surface, but it did have some tillage. You could do better if you wouldn't.
Was it biologicals? Did they use biologicals?
No, no biological. Commercial fertilizers.
Anything else? Technical, specific questions or more general questions are just fine.
I was going to ask Mike, is he still working with Carol Cobden Foundation, and are they still doing all that work in Africa where you mentioned going to Africa? Is that mainly through his foundation?
He's very much involved in many areas. Okay, he has a big push still in Africa. He's very much involved in cover crops and no-till production in Africa, and to help people feed themselves. He also has a major initiative in the United States to improve soil quality and improve productivity in the United States. It's a huge project. If you get Farm Journal magazine, you'll notice that some of us have an article, it's centerfold article in that magazine 4 times a year, where we're taking a local farm somewhere that's been heavy tillage, completely conventional farming, and we convert it over to 100% no-till with cover crops and minimal pesticides, management systems. We've got, if you check on with Farm Journal, you'll see that. I just had an article come out. We do have a project in the Boot Hill, Missouri right now. We just converted a cotton farmer, 6,000 acres, 5,000 in cotton, that 100% conventional. He's now 5,000 acres of no-till and 5,000 acres of cover crops out of the 6,000 acres. And we're trying to get the rice production in line to get it involved with cover crops and no-till production too. So yeah.
I think there was another question at this table over here.
I was just thinking about, there was a lot of talk about, thousands and thousands of acres of grain production. And with the health concerns that people have in our diets, it's been found with, eating huge amounts of grain, and especially corn, high fructose corn syrup, all of this corn that we've been trained to eat since we were kids is really not good for us. And so that's why we've been going back to local farmers markets, trying to figure out where our food's come from, trying to grow our own food. And so, and especially in southern Illinois or Union County specific, the topography of our county does not allow people to have, thousands of acres of flat land except for when you get down by the bottom. So I'm just trying to think of how we can all survive in this era of number one, trying to eat better and trying to growing population, huge populations, people coming in from St. Louis and Chicago, Memphis, Nashville, for tourism. I wonder if anyone has any ideas about agritourism, because I've seen that in other parts of the country. I travel a lot, and people are going back to smaller farms